Ever get that, like, spine-chilling feeling driving down a lonely road late at night? Like something's watching you from the shadows.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, tonight we're going to take a deep dive into some haunted roads and encounters with the unexplained, and we're using the story shared by John Lee Brody
Okay.
from the Morbid Networks podcast.
Yeah.
That was pretty scary.
Sounds spooky.
So we'll be looking at Brody's own experiences exploring these haunted roads, in Illinois, as well as some truly chilling listener tales from his show.
So kind of like a deep dive into a deep dive, huh?
Exactly.
That's cool.
Layering on those stories. But before we jump in, I think it's interesting how these stories often revolve around what we call like liminal spaces, right?
Yes,
These places like roads and borders where we kind of transition from one state of being to another.
Yeah, it's like those in-between places where the veil between our world and the supernatural seems to be like thinnest.
Right. It's like anything could happen there.
Exactly.
So let's start with John Lee Brody's personal experience. He grew up in Palatine, Illinois, and there was this local legend for teenagers, this road called Cuba Road. Have you heard of it?
I have.
You have?
Yeah. It's a classic example of a road, that's like got this folklore around it. It attracts people who are looking for a brush with, the unknown.
Oh, yeah.
It's supposed to be haunted, maybe because it leads to this old cemetery, white cemetery.
Oh, spooky.
And there's all these stories about these eerie orbs of light that people see along the road at night.
And Brody actually saw these orbs firsthand. He describes driving down Cuba Road with his friends in his mom's Volvo, listening to DMX.
Nice.
Yeah, they're feeling all cool and brave until they actually see the orbs.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I mean, it's got to be that moment of realization that what you thought was just a story might actually be, real.
Yeah.
Like the darkness takes on a whole new meaning, right?
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, are these orbs like some kind of manifestation of energy from the cemetery? Or are our minds just like trying to make sense of the dark?
I mean, our brains do love to make up stories, especially in the dark.
Right.
But it's interesting you mentioned the cemetery because Brody's story also involves another location connected to Cuba Road, this place called Rainbow Road.
Okay.
Have you heard of that?
I haven't.
So it leads to this secluded house with all these rumors about it being a former, like, insane asylum or even a mob hideout.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Places with like a history of suffering or violence often become like focal points for ghost stories.
Yeah.
Like they become repositories for these
That's
dark
it.
energies, and that just fuels all those legends, around them.
Exactly. So they're driving down Rainbow Road, already kind of freaked out from the orbs, and things start to get, weirder. They hear what sounds like police sirens, then see these mysterious headlights that vanish, and then they come to this ominous iron gate. What do you think?
Oh, that's creepy. The iron gate, the long, dark driveway. Those are the details that feed into our primal fear of the unknown, right? It's like
Right.
horror movie,
Yeah.
Building that suspense. Like, what's beyond that gate?
Totally. They even get out of the car, and that's when they see headlights coming towards them. Maybe it was just someone who lived there
Yeah.
or something else,
You never know.
but they decided to nope out of there.
Sometimes the scariest stories are the ones with the unanswered questions. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. Our minds go wild,
Yeah.
filling in the blanks, imagining like the worst case scenario. That's what makes it thrilling, right?
Yeah, that's like the best part. But Brody's experience is just one layer of this whole Cuba Road Rainbow Road legend. He also shares stories from listeners who had their own encounters, adding even more, mystery to it.
No, really.
Yeah, like one listener named Kristen Koenig, she saw the orbs too. But then she had a terrifying run-in with a resident with a shotgun while she was trying to find like the asylum or whatever. Oh, wow. That reminds us that it's not just the paranormal stuff that's dangerous in those places, but sometimes it's other people.
Exactly. Another listener, Kristen Chimon, she talked about seeing this strange green light coming from the cemetery.
Hmm.
And one of her friends was actually touched by something they couldn't see. That's got to be one of our primal fears, right?
Yeah.
Being touched by something you can't see.
Yeah, it's a violation of your like personal space.
Probably.
Super creepy.
And then there's the legend of the ghost train. Supposedly, if you honk your horn 3 times on certain train tracks, you'll see it.
Oh, like a dare.
Yeah, like a challenge to the supernatural. It's kind of like our fascination with like testing boundaries, even when it comes to like the spirit world.
Right. Like how far can we push it?
Exactly. So
Right.
we've got orbs, angry residents, unseen touches, and a ghost train. Cuba Road sounds like a place to avoid after dark.
For sure.
But it's amazing how these stories, passed down through generations, create this, like, collective unease around certain places. What do you think?
I think it's fascinating how these stories actually shape how we see the world around us. Even if we haven't experienced anything paranormal on Cuba Road, the stories create that atmosphere, that anticipation and fear. It changes how we see
Yeah,
things.
like our own expectations.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's switch gears a bit and explore a different type of haunting. This listener tale takes us to Carson Newman College in Tennessee,
Mhm.
to a dorm named Butler Hall.
Dorms are like perfect for ghost stories, especially on college campuses.
Right.
You've got all these young people away from home for maybe the first time.
Right.
They're feeling that freedom, but also that vulnerability,
Yeah.
perfect setting for guest stories.
And this specific dorm was built near a cemetery and an abandoned hospital. Talk about prime real estate for a good haunting, right?
Oh.
Our listener, Sarah, she grew up in a really religious environment where the supernatural was just like a normal thing to talk about. But she never really believed in hauntings. What do you think about that?
It's interesting. It makes you wonder if growing up with all that talk of the supernatural made her more or less likely to believe in it?
Yeah, like, was it just too familiar or did it make her skeptical?
Right.
Now, Sarah was like a tough girl.
Mm-hmm.
She played softball. And she decided to be a part of the college's annual haunted house. It was called Frightmare Manor, held in the abandoned west wing of Butler Hall. Can you imagine?
Oh, wow. So she's like going right into the lion's den.
Right into it.
That's brave.
And this wasn't just some, cheesy haunted house either. Sarah described scenes of, like, demonic conjuring, dismemberment, gore.
Hmm.
They even used real chicken gizzards and livers for realism.
Yikes.
Committed to the craft.
But while they were working on the haunted house, Sarah and the other actors started to feel this like eerie presence, like someone or something was watching them. They even felt cold drafts, even though the AC hadn't worked in years. That's classic, for a haunting. It's often attributed to unseen entities, but it also makes you wonder how much of what we experience is influenced by what we expect to happen. Like, if you're already scared, are you gonna interpret every little thing as a ghost?
That's true. It's like when you're walking alone at night and every shadow seems scary because you're already on edge.
Exactly.
So the haunted house wraps up, and Sarah thinks she's done with all the spooky stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then comes Christmas, and she decides to, well, add a little festive cheer to Bertie Maples Butler's portrait in the lobby.
Oh, boy.
So picture this. Sarah, maybe after a little too much Baptist college beer pong, she gives Bertie a full Santa Claus makeover. The hat, the beard, the whole thing.
No, even if you don't believe in ghosts, messing with a portrait of someone who's important to the college is probably not the best idea.
Yeah, you think. Well, Sarah goes back to her room, feeling proud of herself, and passes out. A few weeks later, things start to get weird. At 3 a.m., she wakes up to the sound of muffled screams coming from her TV. And it's just static.
Oh, the classic 3.0 a.m. haunting. There's all this folklore about that time being prime time for spiritual activity.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like the veil between worlds is thinnest then or something.
Interesting.
Kooky.
Well, a few weeks later, it happens again. Same time, same screaming TV. But now the closet light is on. And she always sleeps in total darkness. What do you think about that?
Sounds like something's trying to get her attention. The fact that it's escalating like that, it suggests there's some kind of intent.
Yeah, that's scary.
Like it wants her to know it's there.
So Sarah, being practical, spends the next few nights trying to figure out how to get rid of this ghost. She even considers the whole salt and burn the bones approach she saw in Supernatural.
I love that.
I know, right? It's like we get these blueprints for dealing with the supernatural from pop culture, even if they're not super practical.
Right, but it shows how those stories influence how we see the unknown and how we react to it.
Yeah. Well, luckily for Bertie's remains, Sarah has no idea where to find them. But then things take a truly bizarre turn. At 3 a.m., the TV and the closet light are on again. And now the mini fridge starts opening and closing by itself.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious in a creepy kind of way. Is this ghost trying to scare her or just grab a midnight snack?
Right. Sarah's had enough. She yells at Bertie to leave her alone, and then she hears something unexpected in all that static on the TV.
Santa Claus is coming to town. What do you think?
Oh, wow. It's like Bertie sending her a message. Maybe the Santa decorations were what set her off.
Maybe she hated Santa.
Huh?
It dawns on Sarah that she might have offended Bertie with the whole Santa getup. So she goes down to the lobby, rips the decorations off the portrait, and throws them away. And guess what? The disturbances stop.
So Birdie just wanted her portrait back to normal. Maybe even ghosts had their preferences. And a Santa hat was crossing the line. It makes you wonder, was all that really happening, or was it just the power of suggestion? Her childhood beliefs, the haunted house, it could have all played a part in what she perceived.
That's a good point. The power of suggestion is really strong, especially with ghost stories. Our expectations and beliefs can really shape what we see and hear.
Yeah,
Or maybe Birdie really did hate Santa hats. We'll never know for sure.
exactly. But that's what makes these stories so great, right? They let us explore those mysteries and consider all these different possibilities.
Absolutely. They remind us there are still things in this world we just can't explain. And sometimes it's okay to just enjoy the mystery.
I love that. All right. Are you ready for another road trip? Because this next listener tale takes us to the backwoods of Michigan, to a place called Hatchet Man Road.
Oh, no, that sounds ominous.
Oh, yeah. Buckle up. This one is intense.
Just the name, Hatchet Man Road, it sounds creepy, doesn't it?
It does.
Like something bad happened there.
Right.
It's like the name itself becomes part of the legend.
Yeah, yeah.
Makes it even scarier.
And this road has a particularly gruesome backstory. The legend says there was this guy totally freaked out about the apocalypse, and he built this bunker where he made his family live.
Oh, no.
I know. And eventually he snapped, murdered his whole family with a hatchet, and then killed himself.
That's dark.
It is way darker than like Birdie and the Santa hat.
Yeah, this is like real life horror.
It's tapping into our fear of violence and isolation, the darkness inside people.
Yeah, that's scary.
So the story's already creepy enough, right?
Yeah.
But then we have this mom, Amber, and her two teenage daughters, Alexis and Ashlyn. And they decide to go explore this legend.
Teenagers and haunted roads. Classic combination.
Right. It's like they're invincible, but also they want adventure. They got to test the boundaries, prove how brave they are.
See if the legends are true.
Yeah. And they even bring two friends along. So it's a car full of teenage energy and ghost hunting excitement.
Oh, wow.
And to make things even more interesting, one of the friends says she's a medium.
Whoa, so now there's a direct link to the spirit world right there in the car.
Right. Are they asking for trouble? Are they making themselves more vulnerable? Who knows?
That's spooky.
So they're driving down this Hatchet Man Road, the sun's setting, and they hear this blood-curdling scream from the woods.
Oh, no, that's primal fear right there.
I know. That feeling of being hunted, especially in a place like that, makes you feel so vulnerable.
It's like fight or flight kicks in.
Yeah. Amber, being the mom, wants to leave. But her daughters, especially Alexis, they're all about that teenage bravado. Alexis even challenges the ghost to make itself known. It's like they have to prove they're not scared.
Teenagers, right. They think they can handle anything.
I know. Maybe that's what attracts the supernatural. Who knows? So they're driving away, and Amber glances at her phone, where she's recording everything, of course, and she sees something chilling in the video.
What? What is it?
There's this little girl with long black hair, a white dress, and a teddy bear, just standing there in the trees. But you can only see her through the camera lens.
Whoa, that's so creepy.
I know. Ghost children are always the worst, aren't they?
They're the scariest. It's like innocence lost,
Right. And the fact that you can only see her through the camera makes it even creepier. Like, what else are we missing? What's hiding just beyond what we can see?
I know. It's like our senses can't be trusted.
And then to make it worse, the little girl's eyes are described as these black holes, like empty and lifeless.
Yeah.
No wonder Amber just hit the gas and got out of there.
I wouldn't blame her. I'd be terrified.
But here's where it gets even more unsettling. They're driving home, and Alexis, out of nowhere, apologizes to her friend for being so dismissive earlier. And her friend says, "It's okay, it wasn't really you, it was him making you feel that way." And Alexis is like, "What?"
Oh, no. Like possession.
Right. Did the spirit of the Hatchet Man, get inside Alexis? It's a scary thought.
That's terrifying.
So later, when they're watching the video, the little girl is gone. All you can see are those black eyes in the screenshot. Like the ghost left a piece of itself behind.
That's so disturbing. It's like a mark,
A reminder that it was real.
Yeah, like a scar on their memory.
The story ends with Amber moving into a new house. But get this, it was built in 1900, and there's a cemetery in the backyard.
Oh, wow. She can't escape, can she?
Maybe not, but it's like, those stories remind us that even in our modern world, there are still mysteries out there. unexplained things.
I know, it's like a little peek into the unknown.
We've talked a lot about technology and like capturing evidence of the paranormal. Do you think our phones and cameras are just tools, or could they be like attracting spirits?
That's a good question. Some people believe the electromagnetic fields from our devices can interact with, like, spiritual energy.
Really?
Yeah. Maybe it makes them easier to detect or even draws them in. It's fascinating, isn't it?
We've covered a lot tonight, from teenagers and their fascination with the unknown to the power of suggestion, liminal spaces, even the possibility of possession. It seems like these stories aren't just about ghosts. They're about us.
I think so.
Our fears, our anxieties, our need to make sense of the world.
Yeah, they reflect something deep inside us, you know?
Exactly. And that's why these stories are so powerful. They stick with us. I've noticed that these stories always seem to be connected to specific places, like roads, cemeteries, old houses. What makes those spots so haunted, do you think?
Well, remember we were talking about liminal spaces, those in-between places where things get blurry?
Yeah, yeah.
But there's also this idea of residual energy. Like when something really bad happens, it leaves a mark on a place, an echo of that energy that sticks around, you know?
Oh, interesting. So like a psychic residue. It's almost like the place itself absorbs what happened there and the emotions.
Exactly. And maybe that's what some people are picking up on when they sense a haunting. Not a ghost exactly, but more like a recording of the past.
Wow, like a replay of what happened.
Yeah, something like that. Makes you think about what it really means to haunt a place, doesn't it?
It does. Is it a conscious spirit or just this leftover energy from something bad? It's kind of both, maybe?
Right. It's a question a lot of people are trying to answer. We've talked a lot about fear and the creepy side of these stories, but do you think there's something, I don't know, beautiful about the supernatural too?
Hmm, that's a good question.
Like a sense of wonder?
Yeah, I think so. For a lot of people, the idea that there's something beyond this life,
Yeah.
that spirits exist, it gives them comfort.
I can see that.
Like death isn't the end. And for others, the idea of these unexplained forces, the mysteries we can't understand, that can be pretty amazing too.
Definitely. It reminds us that we don't know everything. There's so much out there beyond what we can see and explain.
And that's okay, right? To admit we don't have all the answers.
Absolutely. I think that's a big part of what we learn from these stories. Being okay with not knowing everything, embracing the mystery.
So we started this deep dive by asking what draws us to these haunted road stories, these encounters with the unexplained. What do you think we've learned?
I think we've seen how these stories connect to our deepest fears, our curiosity about what's out there, our need to find something bigger than ourselves. They make us think about consciousness, about what's real, about life after death. Big stuff.
Yeah, and even if we don't actually believe in ghosts, these stories can still teach us about how we understand the world and how we find meaning in it.
They remind us how powerful our minds are, how our thoughts and beliefs can actually shape what we experience.
And how important it is to be open to different ideas, different ways of seeing things.
Exactly. Whether we're skeptics or believers, these stories take us on this amazing journey into the unknown.
So next time you're on a deserted road at night, think about these stories. You might just see the world a little differently.
And who knows, you might even have your own spooky encounter to tell.
That's right. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. We'll be back next time to explore more of the fascinating and unexpected corners of knowledge.